I'm sorry, I thought I had my mic on. It was muted still, but hello everyone, and thank you for your patience. Welcome to another Clayton County Library System virtual program, Navigating Your Way Through Grief. Our library system recognizes that the last 18 months have been a very trying time for many in our community. And so today on National Grief Day, we've invited Ms. Ashley Woods from Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities to speak on the topic. We ask that if you have any questions, that you place those questions in the chat, and hopefully at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to get around to addressing those concerns. Thank you, Ms. Woods. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me. As she said, my name is Ashley Woods. I am currently working with the Georgia Recovery Project that was put in place because of COVID-19 here in Georgia. And we are able to deliver presentations on different topics. And today I will be delivering a presentation about managing grief. And I do have a background in the mental health field. I've been working in the mental health field since 2008 with severe persistent mental illness as well as children. So if we're all ready, I will go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen so everyone can see the presentation. Okay. Again, I am with the Georgia Recovery Project, and we will be discussing managing grief or navigating through grief today. Just a little bit about the Georgia Recovery Project. It's a FEMA-funded and SAMHSA-informed crisis counseling grant program that provides supplemental mental health funding in the wake of a disaster. The project is here to support Georgians with mental health challenges caused by the pandemic. It's non-therapeutic services. And what we do is we can counsel someone in time of their crisis, and then we can link them to other mental health resources for ongoing and more intense support in their community. We have a program manager that is set up in place. There is a COVID-19 emotional support line. That's that phone number that you see there, the 866 number. It's the COVID emotional support line, where a team of crisis counselors answer the phones and give you resources as well. They talk to you through your crisis and can also link you to community resources. My team that I have under me, as well as also crisis counselors, we can do individual counseling. Again, it's non-therapeutic. It's not usually more than once. If we see that you are needing ongoing services, we will refer to the appropriate services. And we also have a media liaison in place as well. So to start our discussion today, what is grief? So there are different things that we see as grief. We will also go into talking about the stages of grief, but first, what is grief? Grief is the normal response of sorrow, heartache, and confusion that comes from losing someone or something very important to you. It's a common human response after a disaster or other traumatic event. It is a part of life and is a strong, sometimes overwhelming reaction to such occurrences as death, divorce, job loss, having to move, or loss of health due to serious illness. It is also a process that may be exacerbated if it is interrupted. And there are complicated and traumatic grief occurs when events compound and interrupt the normal grieving process. It does not end or allow a person to return to their normal activities and routines. Some of the different ways that grief can appear in anyone, and of course, all these can be different for each person. No one is going to experience grief the same way. Some of the emotional reactions that people have when they are experiencing grief is feeling empty, feeling numb, unable to feel joy, unable to feel sadness, feeling angry. So a lot of your emotions, you may feel anger, but you may not feel any other emotions. You may just feel numb, is why you're unable to feel the joy and sadness. Some physical reactions that come from grief would appear as trembling or shaking, muscle weakness, nausea, trouble eating, trouble sleeping, difficulty breathing, and or dry mouth. So what else does grief look like? Some people experience nightmares, and a lot of times people do social withdrawal and not wanting to participate in their usual activities. And as we get into the stages of grief, you'll see why grief looks like this. It's explained a little bit more when we discuss the stages. So what are the stages of grief? There are two different, there's been two different psychologists that came up with stages. The 5 stages of grief are the stages that everyone usually discusses and talks about. But then there's also 7 stages of grief that have been identified when we do go through loss, not only loss of a person, it could be loss of a job, like I was discussing earlier, loss of a job, a divorce, and things like that. They came up with 7 stages. So I kind of wanted to go over both just to have them there. The 5 stages that I will be discussing are most commonly talked about by a Swiss American psychiatrist who I have noted down here at the bottom. She has a book it's called On Death and Dying, and it discusses those 5 stages. The first stage is denial, which is, we are in denial that that person is gone, that they're no longer living, that, that something was wrong with them or that something is wrong with them, because grief can start before the actual loss. The second stage is anger. We become angry because we lost that person. We become angry because we no longer get to see them. We become angry because, why couldn't this person be helped? The next stage is bargaining. The bargaining stage is that stage where we're like, I just wish I could see this person one more time. If I could just talk to this person one more time, if we could just hold a conversation, if I could just hear you say my name one last time, everything would be okay. The next stage is depression. Depression is that stage where you will feel sadness. You may feel numb. You may not be able to feel joy. You won't be able to enjoy activities that you used to be able to enjoy. You may cry a lot more often. You will withdraw from others. These are things that will happen in this stage of depression. And the last stage discussed in these 5 stages is acceptance, meaning that you may not be completely over the loss of that person, but you can accept that they're gone, and you're kind of able to move forward and know, okay, yes, this person is gone. This is what was wrong with that person. And you're able to accept that they, you know, were sick, they passed away, and that they are, you know, they're now here, and I'm able to accept that they're no longer here with me. So these 5 stages can go, they don't necessarily have to go in the order that they are listed either. They can go all out of order. Like I said, everyone experiences grief differently. So your stages may come at different times, or they may come and they may go, and then they may come back. Grief is not something that only lasts a month, 2 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year. Grief for some people lasts long periods of time. It just depends on how you are working through your stages of grief. So the 7 stages that I found, also, it was also on the same website that I've noted down at the bottom. Some of them are the same. However, they do have the two more that were added. Well, actually, I want to say 3 that were added, but there's only 7. So you still have the shock and denial of, and these stages are more so listed when someone has lost their job or they've gotten a divorce. These are the stages of grief that it's said that they go through. So first you have that shock and denial that, oh my gosh, I can't believe they let me go from this job that I've been at for 15 years, which this happened a lot during COVID. People were losing jobs because of COVID, because, you know, no one is able, and we weren't out spending that money or helping those businesses stay afloat. So people were losing their jobs so people could keep businesses going. Then you experience pain and guilt. Of course, it's upsetting to lose a job or get a divorce. And then you also are going to feel guilty because we always think, well, what did I do? Or what could I have done different that could have changed that outcome, that maybe I could still be married, or that maybe I could still have this job. Next stage, anger and bargaining, which is the same in the other stage. You're angry and you're trying to bargain, you know, bargain with what could have been, what I could have done, or, you know, if I could just go back and change, then this would probably be different. In the 7 stages of grief, you also will experience depression. You will also experience the upward turn, meaning that you will have a turnaround and things won't seem so bad anymore. You'll be like on an upward swing of getting things together and doing the reconstruction that it talks about here of, you know, either looking for that new job or starting that new job, or if it was a divorce, maybe, you know, knowing that, okay, I can be okay by myself. So we're on this upward swing of, let me, you know, let me find out the things that I like to do as far as enjoying myself. What can I do for myself to make myself happy? And then you're in the reconstruction stage of getting back out there, or, you know, looking for a new job. And then there's the acceptance and hope. You're accepting that this is what happened, and we're hopeful that we will be able to move forward and start this new job with a positive attitude, or start new relationships with positive attitudes. So as mentioned earlier, there are complicated and or traumatic grief. So some symptoms of complicated or traumatic grief would be feeling anger about the loss, unable to think about anything except the loss, not wanting reminders of the loss, intrusive thoughts, thoughts that are just taking over constantly that you are struggling to release, feeling deep loneliness and longing for the person or the thing that was lost, feeling distrustful of others, unable to maintain regular activities or fulfill responsibilities, feelings of bitterness about life, envying others not affected by grief, unable to enjoy life, and unable to enjoy memories of the happy times with your loved one. How long does grief usually last? Again, as I said, grief is different for every person and for every loss. You may lose certain people and you may not grieve very long. You may lose someone that was special to you and grieve for a longer period of time. So it just depends on the person that is grieving and the loss that they experienced. It is often difficult for the grieving person to imagine an end to the pain they are feeling. The manner of the loss can affect the length of the grief. I know during COVID, the manner of which we were losing people is extremely painful and causes complicated grief because people, I know with COVID, people at some point in time, the doctors are saying, hey, this person is doing better. They're on this percent of oxygen. They're able to talk, and then the next thing, within 24 hours, you're hearing that this person is on a ventilator and may not make it through the evening. And hearing these things during COVID has been very difficult, and it can affect the way that we grieve as well as the length of time that we grieve. Because when we are hearing that something automatically happened and we weren't even prepared for that to happen, it definitely changes the way that you grieve. Because a lot of times your grief may start out as anger because, wait, I wasn't ready for that to happen. So what do you mean that this is how this happened? Your personal circumstance can affect how long that you grieve. So anything that you have going on personally in your own life outside of the loss that just happened can also affect how you grieve. It can also keep you in grief for longer than expected because you have your own things going on. We must understand that our life may not be the same, but the grief will eventually ease. The grief will ease. Of course, we'll always miss that person that we may have lost, or, we may think about the times that we had at this job and, the friends that we may have made at this job that you may still be in touch with. So we will always, we're not going to be the same after the grief, but it will ease and we will be able to kind of deal a little bit better. The grieving process will allow you to accept the loss and move forward with your life, which is you have to go through the process of grief. Sometimes going through the process of grief, we need help going through each stage of grief, or identifying which stage of grief we're in. And it's okay to call someone for help. It's okay to see a therapist while you're grieving, even after you're grieving. It's okay to talk to someone. It's okay to grieve. A lot of people try not to grieve because they don't want to be seen as weak, or I'm not strong, I can't handle it. We all need to grieve. If you don't grieve, it will eventually come. And not grieving can have physical effects, as we noted earlier, on our body and make us in turn sick and not feel well physically. Taking steps to help yourself, talking to others who understand and respect how you feel. Recognize that the feelings will likely be less intense over time. Take care of yourself physically by exercising, eating healthy, and getting enough sleep, which this part can be hard when you're grieving and you're in the depression stage, because in depression stage, you're probably not going to feel like doing these things. It just depends on how that depression hits. Even in some of the other stages of grief, you may not feel like doing anything physically, but you will need to try to work through these steps to take care of yourself so you can kind of work through the grief as well and not become depressed to a state where you are now exhibiting signs of major depression. Allow yourself to feel joy, sadness, and even cry when you need to. Eventually, you will start feeling the pain of your loss without resisting and avoiding it. Eventually, you will begin to adjust to a new reality in which the object of your grief is no longer present. Start forming new relationships or engaging in activities that are rewarding to you in your new reality. Positive changes from your loss experience. Becoming more understanding and tolerant, which I think a lot of people have learned this through dealing with COVID, even if it didn't hit our homes personally or hit our families personally. I think a lot of people have learned to become more understanding and more tolerant. Having increased appreciation for relationships and loved ones, feeling grateful for those who are loving and caring, experiencing enhanced spiritual connections, and this can be with whoever your higher power may be. I think everyone has, during the times of COVID, we've all learned a greater appreciation for relationships that we do have, that we are in connection with, or even trying to reconnect with people that we not really had a bad relationship with, but we just didn't really talk to often. And experiencing more of a spiritual connection, becoming more socially active. That 2020 was a time to become more socially active on a lot of different issues. Also, getting involved in advocacy to help people who have experienced similar losses. You do notice people are trying to help people more dealing with the losses that they've experienced during the times of COVID. This again is our COVID-19, the Georgia COVID-19 emotional support line. You can call or text this line any day of the week from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. You will get a response from one of the crisis counselors. You will receive resources needed, whatever you're feeling the resources that you may need. You can talk to them about that. They will help with those resources. Not only are they providing resources for mental health, excuse me, but they're also providing resources to help with housing if they have them, to help with finances if they know a resource of someone where they can link you to someone about bill paying and different things of that nature. Again, it's available every day of the week from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Outside of those times, I encourage people to contact GCAL, the Georgia Crisis and Access Line. Jeanette David is the program manager of this grant that is in place. So I just left her information there. However, I can be contacted as well. Again, my name is Ashley Woods, which my email address is ashleigh.woods@dbhdd.ga.gov. and I can be reached by phone at 470-880-3712. And that concludes the PowerPoint presentation. And now I'll stop sharing my screen. And if anyone has any questions, I'm ready.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. I see that there's one question that came through on our YouTube channel, and
Okay.
that person is asking how can she help her children through this process when she herself is also struggling with loss?
So what I would suggest is for mom to reach out. She can reach out to the COVID-19 emotional support line, and they can link her to mental health services, because what it sounds like would need to take place would be ongoing therapy sessions, which would be good for mom, and children can also be involved with their own therapist, as well as they can then do family therapy to help work through the grieving process. That's a great question as well. Because when we ourselves are struggling, yes, we can't, it's hard to help others as much as we do want to help our children. It's hard. So I would definitely suggest therapy for mom as well as therapy for the children, and then they can come together and do family therapy as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other question in the chat right now.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. And so I just wanted to share a few resources that our library do have. For those of you patrons that have a Pines library card, here are some titles that you can definitely check out at the library or place on hold if you call the number that you see there, 770-473-3850, and place your copies on hold. Or you can either visit the Georgia Pines website to place your copy on hold as well. One of the books mentioned was by Miss Ashley on Death and Dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Another that we have, Grief, Climb Towards Understanding by Phyllis Davies. And the other one is When Will I Stop Hurting? Dealing with a Recent Death by June Sursa Kolf. And these are not our only topics that we do have here in our collection, but we have quite a few other topics or titles regarding this particular topic. So again, I encourage listeners and viewers to visit our library system and take a look and see what we have that can help you through the process, as well as reach out to Miss Ashley. She did put her name and number in the information. And again, thank you for participating, and thank you, Miss Ashley, for presenting.
You're welcome.